The sun was bleeding out over Tombstone, painting the dust-choked streets in shades of copper and gold. Wyatt Earp stood behind the polished mahogany bar of his establishment, the Silver Dollar Saloon, watching the evening crowd filter in like moths to a flame. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, pouring whiskey into shot glasses, his pale blue eyes never staying still for more than a heartbeat. Those eyes had seen too much. They'd watched men die in the dirt, seen towns burn, witnessed justice and injustice wear the same face. Now, at 35 years old, Wyatt Earp was more legend than man, a reputation forged in gunpowder and sealed in blood. The fastest draw in the West, they said. The man who never missed. The lawman who brought order to chaos with nothing but iron will and a Colt .45. But Wyatt knew the truth. Speed wasn't everything. It was the steady hand, the calm mind, the ability to read a man's intentions in the twitch of an eyebrow or the flex of fingers near a holster. That's what kept you alive. That's what made you dangerous. Another round, Wyatt? Called out Mayor Clanton from the corner table, his voice thick with bourbon and false friendship. The mayor was a snake in a suit, everyone knew it. But he paid his bills on time and kept the town council off Wyatt's back about his dual role as both sheriff and saloon owner. Coming right up. Mayor? Wyatt replied, his voice carrying that distinctive calm that made nervous men even more nervous. He filled a bottle and handed it to his younger brother Morgan, who moved between tables with easy grace, his own gun belt worn low and ready. Morgan caught his eye and gave a barely perceptible nod toward the entrance. Virgil, their eldest brother and deputy sheriff, had just walked in, and his expression told a story before his mouth opened. "Wyatt," Virgil said quietly, approaching the bar. His marshal's badge caught the lamplight. "We got visitors. 3 riders came in about an hour ago. They're staying at the hotel, but something ain't right about them." Wyatt poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass and slid it across to his brother. "Describe them." Leader's a tall drink of water, maybe 6'3", wearing a black duster despite the heat, scar running from his left eye down to his jaw. The other 2 are Mexican brothers by the look of them. All 3 armed to the teeth and all 3 asking questions about you. The saloon's ambient noise, the clink of glasses, the murmur of conversation, the off-key piano in the corner, seemed to fade into the background. Wyatt's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that come before bullets," Virgil said, downing his whiskey. "They wanted to know your routine, when you patrol, where you live. If you're really as fast as the stories say." Morgan had drifted back to the bar, his hand resting casually near his pistol. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" he asked, his young face hardening with determination. "I'm thinking we don't know enough yet," Wyatt replied. But his mind was already working through possibilities, calculating angles, preparing for violence that seemed to hang in the air like the promise of rain. "Anyone recognize them?" "No," Virgil said. "But that scar. I feel like I've seen it before. Maybe on a wanted poster?" "Can't place it." The doors of the Silver Dollar swung open with a creak that somehow cut through every other sound in the room. The conversations didn't stop exactly, but they changed, became quieter, more cautious. Every eye in the saloon tracked the 3 men who entered. The leader was exactly as Virgil had described, tall, lean, dangerous. The scar on his face looked like it had been earned the hard way, carved by a knife in some fight he'd survived when he should have died. His eyes swept the room with the confidence of a predator. Finally settling on Wyatt behind the bar, the 2 Mexican brothers flanked him, twins by the look of them, both wearing matching silver conchos on their gun belts that caught the light like warning signals. The scarred man approached the bar with slow, deliberate steps. His boots, expensive, custom-made, clicked against the wooden floor. When he reached the bar, he smiled, showing teeth that were too white, too perfect. "Wyatt Earp," he said, and his voice had a peculiar quality, smooth as silk, wrapped around razor wire. "The famous sheriff. The legendary gunfighter. The fastest draw in the West." He paused, letting the moment stretch. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." Wyatt set down the glass he'd been cleaning, his movements unhurried. I'm at a disadvantage, friend. You seem to know me, but I don't recall making your acquaintance. Name's Jack Hollister, the man said, and suddenly Virgil's sharp intake of breath told Wyatt everything he needed to know. Though I suspect your brother there just remembered where he's seen my face. 15 years is a long time, but some things don't wash off easy. 15 years. Wyatt's mind raced backward through time, through countless faces and forgotten names, until it landed on a memory he'd buried deep. A raid on an outlaw camp outside Wichita. A young man, barely 20, who'd sworn vengeance as Wyatt had killed his father in a fair fight. A young man with a fresh knife wound across his face from that same battle. You were just a kid, Wyatt said quietly. I was, Hollister agreed. Now I'm not. Now I'm the man who's going to prove that Wyatt Earp ain't nothing but an old reputation living on borrowed time. The saloon had gone completely silent now. Even the piano player had stopped, his hands frozen above the keys. Every soul in that room understood what was happening. They were watching the prelude to a funeral. They just didn't know whose yet. Morgan's hand moved closer to his gun. But Wyatt gave the slightest shake of his head. Not yet. Not here, with innocent people in the crossfire. If you've got business with me, Wyatt said, his voice carrying that deadly calm that had made him famous, then state it plain. But my saloon ain't the place for it. Too many good people could catch lid that wasn't meant for them. Hollister's smile widened. Oh, I got business with you, Earp. See, I spent 15 years getting fast. Real fast. Faster than anyone you've ever drawn against. I've beaten men in Dodge City, Abilene, Deadwood, killed 17 men in fair duels, and every one of them thought they were quick. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the bar top. His eyes locked with Wyatt's. Tomorrow at noon, Main Street. You and me. We settle what you started 15 years ago when you killed my father. And when the dust clears, everyone's going to know that Jack Hollister is the new fastest gun in the West, and Wyatt Earp is just another dead legend buried in Boot Hill. The challenge hung in the air like gun smoke. Wyatt felt the weight of every eye in the room, felt the familiar tightening in his gut that came before violence, felt the old questions rising up. Was this justice, or was this just another young fool choosing death over sense? I didn't murder your father, Wyatt said quietly. He drew first. He chose his fate, and now you're choosing yours, Hollister replied. He straightened up, his hand moving in a blur. Every gun in the Earp family cleared leather in a heartbeat, 3 barrels pointed at Hollister's chest before his hand even reached his pistol. But he wasn't drawing. He was pulling out a silver pocket watch, which he set gently on the bar. Noon tomorrow, he repeated. Don't make me come looking for you, Sheriff. That would be unpleasant for everyone. He turned and walked toward the door, his 2 companions following like shadows. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. Oh, and Earp, don't even think about leaving town. My friends and I will be watching every road. You run, and I'll hunt you down like a dog. You stay, and you get to die with whatever honor you got left. Your choice. Then they were gone, the saloon doors swinging shut behind them. The room exploded into nervous chatter, everyone talking at once, but Wyatt barely heard it. He was staring at the pocket watch on his bar, expensive, engraved with initials he recognized. H.J.H. Harold James Hollister, Jack's father. The man Wyatt had killed all those years ago in a dusty Kansas street. Wyatt, Morgan said urgently, we can take him. The 3 of us together. No, Wyatt interrupted, his voice firm. This is my fight. It started with me, it ends with me. The hell it does, Virgil growled. We're brothers. We face everything together. That's the code. That's always been the code. Wyatt looked at his brothers, these men who'd stood beside him through every storm, every battle, every impossible situation. Love and loyalty burned in their eyes, but so did fear. Not fear of dying. Earps didn't fear death, but fear of losing each other. I need you both alive, Wyatt said quietly. If something happens to me, nothing's gonna happen to you, Morgan interrupted fiercely. You're the fastest there is. Everyone knows it, but Wyatt wasn't so sure anymore. He'd seen the way Hollister moved, the confidence in his eyes. This wasn't some drunk cowboy or desperate outlaw. This was a man who'd spent 15 years preparing for this moment, honing his skills for one purpose: revenge. The night stretched ahead, full of shadows and uncertainties. Somewhere out there, Jack Hollister was preparing, cleaning his guns, checking his drawer, imagining the moment when Wyatt Earp fell bleeding in the street. And here in the Silver Dollar Saloon, surrounded by whiskey and worried faces, Wyatt Earp touched the badge on his chest and wondered, not for the first time, if justice and vengeance were really different things, or just two names for the same bullet. Tomorrow at noon, one way or another, he'd have his answer. The clock on the wall of Wyatt's office ticked like a countdown to judgment. Midnight had come and gone, dragging the small hours behind it like a ball and chain. Wyatt sat at his desk, a half-empty bottle of whiskey within reach, though his glass remained untouched. Clear head, always a clear head before a fight. The wanted posters on the wall stared down at him, faces of men he'd hunted, captured, killed, each one a story, each one a choice between mercy and necessity. Some of those faces still visited him in dreams, asking questions he couldn't answer. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. "It's open!" he called out. Virgil entered carrying 2 tin cups of coffee. He set one in front of Wyatt and settled into the chair across the desk with a weary sigh. The lamplight cast deep shadows under his eyes. He hadn't slept either. "Remember Pa's advice?" Virgil asked quietly, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. "About gunfights?" Wyatt allowed himself a slight smile. "Never draw on a man unless you're willing to kill him. Never kill a man unless you got no other choice. And never ever let pride make your decisions for you." "Good advice," Virgil said. "Kept us alive this long." He paused, studying his brother's face. "So why does this feel different?" Wyatt was silent for a long moment, staring into the darkness beyond the window. Out there, somewhere in the night, Jack Hollister was waiting, planning, preparing. "Because it is different," Wyatt finally admitted. "Every man I've ever faced, I knew why I was facing them. They broke the law. They threatened innocent people. They chose violence, and I answered with justice." He picked up Harold Hollister's pocket watch, turning it over in his hands. "But Jack Hollister, he ain't breaking any law. He's calling me out for something I did legally, rightfully even. His father drew first. So don't fight him," Virgil said simply. "Walk away. We'll leave town tonight, all 3 of us. Start fresh somewhere else." "You know I can't do that." "Why? Because of pride? Because of reputation?" Virgil's voice grew heated. "Wyatt, you're my brother. You're worth more to me alive and called a coward than dead and called a hero." Wyatt met his brother's eyes, seeing the fear there, the desperate love. "It ain't about pride, Virg. It's about what comes after. If I run from Jack Hollister, every gun-crazy kid from here to California will come looking to make his name by facing down the man who ran. I'd be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. We all would. And if you die tomorrow, then you make sure Morgan gets out of this life. Promise me that. He's young enough, smart enough. He could still be something other than a target." Virgil stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Damn it, Wyatt. Stop talking like you're already dead. You're the best there is. You've proved it 100 times. "I was the best," Wyatt corrected quietly. 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But I'm older now, slower. Maybe not by much, but in a gunfight, not by much is the difference between breathing and bleeding out in the street." The door burst open without warning, and Morgan rushed in, his face flushed with urgency. "We got problems, big problems." Both brothers were on their feet instantly, hands moving toward their guns. "What is it?" Wyatt demanded. "I couldn't sleep, so I took a walk around town. Saw lamplight in the old Henderson barn on the edge of town. You know, the one that's been abandoned since the fire. Went to investigate." Morgan paused, catching his breath. "Hollister's got more than just those 2 Mexicans with him. There's at least 6 more men camped out there. They're armed for war, Wyatt. Rifles, dynamite, enough ammunition to siege a fort. The brothers exchanged glances. This changed everything. He's not planning a fair duel, Virgil said grimly. He's planning an execution. Wyatt's mind worked through the possibilities, like a chess player seeing moves ahead. He knows I won't run. He knows I'll show up at noon. But he also knows my reputation, knows there's a chance, however small, that I might actually beat him in a fair draw. So he's got backup, insurance. We need to arrest them, Morgan said. Right now. Before... On what charge? Wyatt interrupted. Being in an abandoned barn, having guns in the West. Morgan, they haven't broken any laws yet. If I try to arrest them without cause, I'm the one in the wrong. I'm the one who'll have the territorial governor breathing down my neck. So what do we do? Virgil asked. Walk into an ambush? Wyatt moved to the window, looking out at the darkened street. Somewhere out there, in the maze of buildings and alleys, death was waiting. But it had always been waiting. That was the nature of his life, his choices. The badge he wore was both shield and target. We changed the game, Wyatt said slowly, an idea forming. Hollister wants a showdown at noon, Main Street, where his men can be positioned in windows and rooftops. Classic crossfire setup. So we don't give him that. What are you thinking? Morgan asked. I'm thinking we move the fight to ground of our choosing. Make him come to us, make him uncomfortable, make him rush. Wyatt turned to face his brothers. And I'm thinking we use the one advantage we've always had. We trust each other completely, and our enemies never do. For the next 2 hours they planned. Wyatt spread a hand-drawn map of Tombstone across his desk, marking positions, calculating angles, preparing for every contingency. It was dangerous, it was probably illegal, but it was survival, and in the West, survival trumped everything else. As false dawn began to grey the eastern sky, Wyatt sent his brothers to get a few hours of rest. They protested, but he insisted. You're no good to me, exhausted. Get some sleep. We'll need every advantage when the sun comes up. Alone again, Wyatt walked out onto the street. The town was silent, suspended in that peculiar stillness that comes just before morning. His boots echoed on the wooden boardwalk as he made his way past shuttered stores and dark windows. He stopped in front of his saloon, the Silver Dollar. His pride, his investment, the legitimate business he'd built to prove he was more than just a gun. Through the window, he could see the bar where he'd stood just hours ago, the tables where men laughed and gambled and forgot their troubles for a while. Would he ever stand behind that bar again? Or would tomorrow's noon sun be the last he'd ever see, a sound behind him, soft, almost imperceptible? Wyatt's hand dropped to his Colt, and he spun with the fluid grace of a man who'd survived 100 ambushes. But it wasn't an attacker. It was a woman. She stepped out of the shadows between buildings, wrapped in a dark shawl despite the warmth of the coming day. Sarah Mitchell, the widow who ran the boarding house on 5th Street. She was beautiful, in a tired sort of way, the kind of beauty that came from surviving hardship with dignity intact. Mrs. Mitchell, Wyatt said, tipping his hat, his hand moving away from his gun. Dangerous time to be out walking alone. I could say the same to you, Sheriff, she replied softly. Her eyes, grey as storm clouds, searched his face. I heard about tomorrow. About the challenge. News travels fast. It's a small town, a scared town. She moved closer, and he caught the faint scent of lavender soap. They're saying you're going to die, Wyatt. They're saying this Jack Hollister is faster, younger, hungrier. They might be right, Wyatt admitted. There was something about the pre-dawn darkness that invited honesty, stripped away pretense. Sarah reached out and placed her hand on his chest, right over his badge. My husband wore a badge like this, in Denver 7 years ago. He died in the street, facing down 3 drunk cowboys who didn't think the law applied to them. He was brave. He was honorable. He was also dead at 32, and I was left alone with 2 children to raise and a town that forgot his name before they even buried him. Her voice didn't break, didn't waver, just stated facts, hard and cold as river stones. "I'm sorry," Wyatt said quietly. "I didn't know." "Why would you? It's not your story, it's mine." She pulled her hand back. "I'm not asking you to run, Wyatt. I know you can't, won't. Men like you don't run. It's not in your nature. But I am asking you to remember that survival isn't cowardice, that living to fight another day isn't weakness, that the bravest thing you can do sometimes is choose to keep breathing, even if it hurts your pride." She turned to walk away, then paused. "My children asked about you tonight. They wanted to know if the sheriff was really as fast as everyone says. I told them you were. I told them you were the best. I'd like to not have to tell them I was wrong." Then she was gone, disappearing into the maze of buildings like a ghost. Wyatt stood alone in the street, her words echoing in his mind. The weight of other people's faith, other people's hope. Sometimes it was heavier than any gun. The sky was lightening now, stars fading one by one. In a few hours the town would wake, the streets would fill, and at noon, in the merciless glare of the desert sun, Wyatt Earp would face Jack Hollister. One way or another, legends would be made or broken, blood would be spilled, and the West would get another story to tell around campfires and saloon bars, a story of speed, steel, and the fine line between justice and revenge. Wyatt touched the badge on his chest, the same spot where Sarah's hand had rested, and made himself a silent promise. He would survive this, not for glory, not for reputation, but for all the people who still believed that a badge meant something, that justice was more than just the fastest draw. He walked back toward his office, his shadow stretching long behind him in the growing light. 6 hours until noon. 6 hours to live or prepare to die. He chose to prepare to live. Dawn broke over Tombstone like a brass band, playing out of tune, harsh, unforgiving, impossible to ignore. Wyatt stood on the roof of the mercantile building, watching the town come alive below. Shopkeepers opening their doors, women hanging laundry, children running errands before the heat became unbearable. Normal life, continuing despite the violence that hung over everything like a storm cloud. From this vantage point, he could see the entire main street, the killing ground Jack Hollister had chosen. And more importantly, he could see every window, every rooftop, every alley where a rifleman could hide. "There," Virgil said, pointing to the hotel's 3rd floor. "The corner room has a perfect angle on the street. If I was planning an ambush, I'd put my best shooter there. And there," Morgan added, indicating the feed store across the way. "2nd-floor storage room. Windows face both directions. One man could cover the whole intersection." Wyatt nodded, committing every position to memory. His brothers had good eyes, good tactical minds. They'd learned from their father, who'd learned from his time in the army. The Earps didn't just fight. They thought, planned, adapted. "We need men we can trust," Wyatt said. "Not many, but solid. Men who can handle themselves in a fight and who won't fold when the lead starts flying." "Doc Holliday," Virgil said immediately. "He's been laying low at the Oriental since that tuberculosis flare-up last week, but he'd come if you asked." Wyatt shook his head. "Doc's sick. I won't ask a dying man to risk what little time he's got left. Doc would shoot you himself if he heard you say that," Morgan said, with a grim smile. "You know how he is about debts and loyalty." It was true. Doc Holliday, gambler, dentist, killer, was the strangest friend Wyatt had ever made. Their bond had been forged in gunfire and sealed in blood, the kind of friendship that only made sense on the frontier. Doc had saved Wyatt's life twice, and Wyatt had returned the favor. In Doc's world, that meant something eternal. "All right," Wyatt conceded. "But we ask, we don't demand." His choice. They climbed down from the roof, boots finding familiar handholds on the wooden structure. The sun was climbing higher now, heat beginning to shimmer off the street. 4 hours until noon. The Oriental Saloon was quieter than usual, the early morning crowd nursing hangovers and regrets. Wyatt found Doc at his usual table in the back, a bottle of whiskey at his elbow, cards spread out in a game of solitaire. He looked pale, thinner than last time, but his eyes were still sharp as broken glass. "Wyatt," Doc said without looking up, his southern drawl stretching the syllables. "Come to invite me to your funeral?" "Come to invite you to help make sure it's someone else's," Wyatt replied. Pulling out a chair, Doc finally looked up, and a smile played at the corners of his mouth, that peculiar smile that was half humor, half death wish. "I'm listening." Wyatt laid it out, Hollister, the challenge, the ambush waiting to happen. Doc listened without interruption, his fingers absently shuffling cards with practiced ease. When Wyatt finished, Doc was quiet for a long moment. Then he downed his whiskey in one swallow, grimacing as it burned down his ravaged throat. "You know what I love about you, Wyatt?" Doc said finally. "You still believe in fair fights in a world that stopped playing fair about a century ago." He stood up, swaying slightly, then steadied himself. "Where do you need me?" Relief flooded through Wyatt, though he kept his face neutral. "Roof of the barber shop. You'll have clear sightlines on the hotel and feed store, the most likely positions for Hollister's riflemen. Consider it done." Doc paused, a coughing fit overtaking him. When it passed, there was blood on his handkerchief, but he waved off Wyatt's concerned look. "I'm fine. Takes more than consumption to kill a holiday. Been trying for years and I'm still breathing." He grinned that death's head grin. Well, mostly, they left Doc to his preparations and headed back into the growing heat. The town was fully awake now and word had spread. People lined the boardwalks, whispering, watching. Some looked at Wyatt with hope, others with pity. A few enterprising souls were already taking bets. Mayor Clanton intercepted them outside the sheriff's office, his face flushed and sweating despite the early hour. "Earp! We need to talk, now." Wyatt studied the mayor, noted the nervous energy, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet Wyatt's. "Speak your piece, Mayor." "This situation with Hollister. It's bad for business, bad for the town's reputation. I'm ordering you as mayor to leave town. Just for today. Let this blow over. Let it blow over," Wyatt repeated flatly. "You mean let Hollister think I ran? Let every gunfighter between here and the Pacific know that Wyatt Earp can be scared off. Better that than a bloodbath in Main Street." Clanton's voice rose. "You don't understand the position you're putting us in. The territorial governor is watching Tombstone. One more incident, one more shooting, and we lose our chance at statehood. The railroad deal falls through. Everything we've built crumbles." Virgil stepped forward, his face hard. "Sounds like you care more about money than justice, Mayor." "I care about this town's future," Clanton shot back. "Which is more than I can say for you Earps and your obsession with reputation." Wyatt felt something cold settle in his gut, a suspicion crystallizing into certainty. "You've talked to Hollister, haven't you?" The mayor's face went pale. I don't know what you... Don't lie to me." Wyatt's voice was quiet, dangerous. "What did he offer you? What's your cut of whatever deal you made with the devil?" Clanton's shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like what he really was, a small man who'd made bad choices and was drowning in the consequences. "He said he just wanted you. A fair fight, one-on-one. He promised there'd be no collateral damage, no innocent casualties. He said, if I could convince you to face him without interference, he'd make sure his men kept the peace afterward. He'd even leave town once it was done. And you believed him," Morgan said incredulously. "I believed in avoiding a war." Clanton's voice cracked. "You don't know what he threatened, Wyatt. He said if you didn't face him, his men would start burning. The saloons first, then the stores, then the homes. He said he'd turn Tombstone into a graveyard to draw you out." Wyatt exchanged glances with his brothers. This was worse than they'd thought. Hollister wasn't just a vengeful son. He was a tactician, a manipulator. He'd bought or intimidated the town's leadership, isolated Wyatt politically, and set up a situation where any move looked like the wrong one. "Where are his men positioned?" Wyatt demanded. "Tell me everything you know." Clanton hesitated, then the fight went out of him. He was a corrupt politician, but he wasn't quite evil enough to send a man into an ambush completely blind. The hotel, the feed store, 2 men in the church bell tower, can you believe that? Using a house of God as a sniper's nest, and at least 3 more scattered in the crowd, pretending to be spectators. How do we identify them? They're all wearing red bandanas, tucked in pockets, tied around arms, hidden but visible if you know to look. Wyatt nodded slowly. Red bandanas. That was almost arrogant. Hollister was so confident that he didn't even bother with subtlety. One more thing, Clanton said quietly. He has a man inside your organization. Someone close. He didn't tell me who, but he mentioned it. Said he knows everything you're planning before you plan it. The words hit like a physical blow. A traitor. Someone they trusted had sold them out. Wyatt looked at his brothers, saw his own shock reflected in their faces. In their world, betrayal was the deepest sin. Loyalty was everything. It was what separated civilization from chaos, family from strangers, life from death. Get out of my sight, Wyatt told the mayor. And pray I'm in a forgiving mood when this is over. Clanton fled, practically running down the street. A traitor, Morgan said, his voice tight with fury. Who? Who would betray us? Someone who wants money, or someone who's scared, Virgil said. Could be anyone. But Wyatt was already thinking through the possibilities. Who knew their plans? Who had access to their movements? The list was short, but it included men he'd trusted with his life. A gunshot cracked through the morning air. Sharp, close, deliberate, all three Earps drew simultaneously, a fluid motion born of years of practice. But the shot hadn't been aimed at them. It had come from the direction of the old Henderson barn, Hollister's base camp. A rider came galloping down the street, hunched low over his saddle, blood streaming from his shoulder. He pulled up hard in front of the sheriff's office, nearly falling from his horse. It was Tommy Chen, the young Chinese man who ran the laundry. He'd done odd jobs for the Earps, proved himself trustworthy and brave, despite the prejudice he faced daily, in a town that didn't always welcome his kind. Sheriff, Tommy gasped, clutching his wounded shoulder. I was watching the barn like you asked. They caught me. They were going to kill me, but I got away. They're moving, Sheriff. Moving into position now. Earlier than noon. They're planning to hit you when you come out of the office. Right now. Before Wyatt could respond, the morning exploded into violence. Rifle shots shattered windows. Bullets punched into the wooden walls of the sheriff's office. From multiple directions, the hotel, the feed store, the church, Hollister's men opened fire. The ambush had begun early, and Wyatt Earp, the vastest draw in the West, was caught in a kill-box with nowhere to run. Down! Wyatt roared, shoving Tommy Chen through the doorway as bullets tore through the air where the young man's head had been a heartbeat before. The three Earps moved with the synchronized precision of men who'd fought together for years. Virgil kicked the door shut while Morgan overturned the heavy oak desk, creating cover. Wyatt grabbed his Winchester from the gun rack, levering a round into the chamber as glass exploded around them. Count! Virgil shouted over the thunder of gunfire. 3 from the hotel. Morgan called back, peering through a bullet hole in the wall. 2 from the feed store. Church tower, can't get an angle. 9 men minimum, Wyatt calculated, his mind working through possibilities even as his body moved on instinct. The office was built sturdy, thick walls, small windows, but it was a trap. Stay here, and eventually they'd be overrun or burned out. We need to move. Tommy, how bad are you hit? The young man pressed his hand against his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. I can move, Sheriff. I can fight. You can live, Wyatt corrected. That's what you're going to do. Virgil, get him to Doc Schultz's place. Go through the back. Use the alley system. I'm not leaving you, Virgil said flatly. That's an order, Deputy. Wyatt's voice carried absolute authority. Tommy saved our lives with his warning. We owe him his. And I need someone I trust getting word to Doc Holliday about the change in plans. A bullet punched through the window, showering them with glass. Morgan returned fire, his Colt barking 3 times in rapid succession. Someone screamed from across the street, at least one hit. Virgil locked eyes with his brother, a lifetime of shared battles passing between them in that look. Finally he nodded. Don't you dare die before I get back. Wasn't planning on it. Virgil hauled Tommy to his feet and moved toward the back door. The moment he opened it, rifles cracked from new positions. They'd anticipated the escape route. They're everywhere. Tommy gasped. Not everywhere, Wyatt said, his mind already 3 moves ahead. Just everywhere they think we'll go. Morgan, covering fire on my signal. Virgil, when I break left toward the water trough, you break right toward the stable. They can't shoot both directions at once. That's a terrible plan, Morgan said. You got a better one? Not even slightly. Wyatt moved to the front window, rifle ready. Through the shattered glass he could see the street, empty of civilians now. Everyone having scattered to safety. Smart. The only people left were the ones who'd come to kill or be killed. He spotted movement in the hotel window, a rifle barrel adjusting position. In the feed store, a shadow shifted. And somewhere in that church tower, he knew there were men with long guns drawing beads on anything that moved. Now. Wyatt kicked open the front door and dove left, rolling behind the water trough as bullets chewed up the ground where he'd been standing. The iron trough rang like a bell as rounds hammered into it, but it held. Behind him, Morgan's Colt thundered, laying down suppressing fire. Through the chaos, Wyatt saw Virgil and Tommy disappear around the corner toward the stable. Good. Too safe. At least for now. A figure emerged from the hotel entrance, one of the Mexican twins, silver conchos glinting even in the gunsmoke haze. He moved with fluid grace, both pistols drawn, firing as he advanced down the street. "Earp," he called out, his accent thick but his words clear. "My name is Carlos Mendoza. I am the man who will kill the famous Wyatt Earp." Wyatt didn't answer with words. He brought his Winchester up and fired in one smooth motion. The bullet caught Carlos in the leg, spinning him around. The man went down hard but kept firing, his pistols barking defiance, even as blood spread across the dusty street. His brother, it had to be his brother, let out a howl of rage from the feed store and came charging out, abandoning strategy for fury. "Carlos! Carlos!" "That's Luis!" Morgan shouted. "He's mine." But before either Earp could fire, a rifle shot cracked from an unexpected direction, the barbershop roof. Luis Mendoza jerked, dropped one pistol, then another shot took him in the chest. He collapsed beside his brother, their blood mingling in the dirt. Doc Holliday's distinctive laugh floated across the battlefield. "Gentlemen," his voice called out, "so kind of you to start the party without me." "Doc, you beautiful son of a bitch," Wyatt muttered, allowing himself the briefest smile. But there was no time for relief. The game had changed. Hollister's men were exposed, panicking, their carefully planned ambush deteriorating into chaos. Wyatt made his decision. "Morgan, we're taking the fight to them. Hotel first." They moved together, using every bit of cover, water troughs, hitching posts, overturned wagons. Bullets followed them, kicking up dust, splintering wood, singing past their ears with that peculiar whine that meant death missed by inches. The hotel entrance loomed ahead. Wyatt hit the doors at a full run, Morgan right behind him. Inside, the lobby was a maze of furniture and shadows. Somewhere above, footsteps pounded, men repositioning, trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their perfect trap. Up the stairs or wait for them to come down? Morgan asked, breathing hard. Wyatt was already moving. Up, always take the high ground. They took the stairs 3 at a time, Winchesters ready. The second-floor hallway stretched ahead, doors on both sides, any one of them potentially hiding death. This was the nightmare scenario. Close quarters, unknown enemies, 100 ways to die. A door burst open to their right. A man emerged, shotgun rising. Wyatt fired from the hip, the Winchester's report deafening in the confined space. The man went down, and the shotgun discharged into the ceiling, raining plaster dust. 2 more doors opened simultaneously, left and right. This time it was Morgan who reacted faster, his revolvers a blur. 2 shots, 2 bodies falling. The kid was fast. Maybe not as fast as Wyatt used to be, but fast enough. Fast enough to stay alive. The corner room, the one Virgil had identified as the perfect sniper position. Its door stood ajar, lamplight spilling out. Too obvious. Too easy. Wyatt held up a fist. Morgan froze. They listened. In the silence between heartbeats they heard it. The subtle creak of floorboards from the room beside the corner room. Someone waiting in ambush for anyone who'd figured out the obvious position. Wyatt pointed to himself, then to the door of the adjacent room. Pointed to Morgan, then to the corner room. Morgan nodded understanding. They moved in sync. Wyatt kicked in the adjacent door, while Morgan kicked in the corner room, each covering the other's blind spot. In the adjacent room, a man spun from his position by the window, rifle coming up. Wyatt's Winchester spoke once. The man dropped in the corner room, empty. A decoy, which meant Wyatt. Morgan's shout came a split second before the closet door in the corner room burst open and Jack Hollister himself stepped out. Both pistols drawn, that scarred face split in a savage grin. "Finally," Hollister breathed. "Just you and me, Earp, the way it should be." Time seemed to slow. Wyatt could see Morgan in his peripheral vision, could see his brother's hands moving toward his guns. But Hollister's pistols were already level, already aimed at Morgan's chest. No time to think, only to act. Wyatt dove sideways, his Winchester falling forgotten as his Colt cleared leather with the speed that had made him a legend. His first shot took Hollister in the shoulder, spinning him. His second shot hit the man's gun hand, sending one pistol flying. But Hollister was fast, insanely, impossibly fast. Even wounded, he was bringing his remaining pistol around, adjusting his aim back to Morgan. Morgan fired. Once, twice, three times. At least one shot found its mark. Hollister grunted, stumbled backward. But he didn't fall. He brought his pistol up one more time, blood streaming down his arm, his face a mask of pain and determination. "You killed my father," Hollister gasped. "You took everything from me. Your father chose his path," Wyatt said, his Colt steady. "Just like you're choosing yours. It doesn't have to end this way. Jack, drop the gun, live. Find another way." For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered in Hollister's eyes, doubt, uncertainty, the ghost of the boy he'd been before revenge consumed him. Then it was gone. "There is no other way," Hollister said, and his gun began to rise. 3 shots rang out as one, Wyatt and Morgan firing simultaneously. Hollister jerked backward, hit the wall and slowly slid down to the floor. His pistol slipped from his fingers, clattering on the wooden boards. Wyatt approached carefully, Colt still ready. But there was no need. Jack Hollister stared at the ceiling, his breathing shallow and ragged, blood spreading across his chest. Did I at least wound you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Wyatt looked down at himself. His left side burned, a graze, he realized, from one of Hollister's shots. Not serious, but it had been close. Another inch and it would have been his heart. "You got close," Wyatt admitted. "Closer than most." Hollister laughed, and it turned into a cough that brought blood to his lips. "Close. Don't count for nothing in this game." His eyes found Wyatt's. "Was my father, was he fast? When you killed him?" "He was fast," Wyatt said honestly. "But he was angry. Anger makes you fast but sloppy. You were better than him. You trained harder, thought more clearly. You could have been something, Jack, something other than this." "Too late now," Hollister whispered. His eyes were losing focus. "Tell me, are you really the fastest?" Wyatt holstered his Colt. "I'm the one still standing. That's all that matters." Jack Hollister died with that answer, his eyes open, staring at nothing. Downstairs, the sounds of gunfire had stopped. An eerie silence settled over Tombstone, broken only by the ringing in their ears and the pounding of their hearts. Wyatt and Morgan descended the stairs to find Virgil waiting in the lobby, slightly winded but unharmed. Behind him, Doc Holliday leaned against the doorframe, his rifle cradled in his arms, looking pleased with himself despite the blood on his handkerchief. "Tommy?" Wyatt asked. "Safe with Doc Schultz." "He'll be fine." Virgil looked at his brothers, checking for injuries. His eyes caught the blood seeping through Wyatt's shirt. "You're hit, barely." "I've had worse." Wyatt moved to the hotel window, looking out at the street. Bodies lay scattered. Carlos and Luis Mendoza, 3 men Doc had shot from his rooftop position, 2 more who'd apparently tried to flee and been caught in crossfire. "Count." 8 dead, Doc reported. 1 wounded and in custody. He's singing like a canary about the whole operation. Apparently, Hollister promised them each $1,000 to help kill you. "Quite the bounty. And the town?" Morgan asked. "Civilians?" "No casualties," Virgil said. "Amazing, considering. Everyone dove for cover when the shooting started." "We're lucky," Lucky, Wyatt supposed they were. He touched the badge on his chest. Still there, still solid, still meaning something even after everything. Outside, people were emerging from buildings, their faces pale but relieved. The nightmare was over. The streets would be cleaned, the bodies buried, and life would go on. That's how it always was in the West. Violence erupted like a summer storm, devastating and quick, then gone, leaving only memories and ghosts. Mayor Clanton appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. "Sheriff Earp, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," Wyatt replied, his voice cold. "Just stay out of my way while I clean up the mess you helped create." The mayor opened his mouth, then closed it again and backed away. Some lessons were learned in blood. As the adrenaline began to fade, Wyatt felt the full weight of exhaustion settling over him. His side ached, his ears rang, his hands trembled slightly. The aftermath of battle, of death dealt and barely avoided, but he was alive. His brothers were alive. The town was safe. For today, at least, that was enough. Not for Jack Hollister and his men. They were buried quickly in unmarked graves at the edge of Boot Hill, their names recorded only in the sheriff's ledger. That was the way of the West. Die with honor, get remembered. Die as a hired gun in an ambush. Get forgotten before the dirt settled. But Carlos and Luis Mendoza, the twins, got something different. Despite being on the wrong side of the fight, they died brave, died fighting. That meant something to men like Wyatt Earp. So he paid for proper coffins, arranged for a priest, and stood with hat in hand as they were laid to rest with whatever dignity the frontier afforded. "You didn't have to do this," Virgil said quietly, standing beside him in the cemetery. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and somewhere a mockingbird sang, oblivious to human grief. "Yes, I did," Wyatt replied. "They made bad choices, followed the wrong man. But they were loyal to each other, fought for each other. That counts for something." Morgan approached, his face troubled. "Wyatt, we found something. In Hollister's belongings at the hotel." He handed over a leather journal. Wyatt opened it, squinting in the bright light. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, observations, notes, plans. And there, on the third page, a list of names. Hollister's hired guns. But it was the last name on the list that made Wyatt's blood run cold. Deputy Frank Thompson, $2,000 for information on Earp movements and plans. Frank Thompson, a deputy Wyatt had hired 8 months ago. A man he'd trusted to watch the town when he was away. A man who'd eaten at their table, shared their whiskey, sworn an oath to uphold the law. The traitor. "Where is he?" Wyatt asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Sheriff's office," Morgan said. "He doesn't know we know." Virgil's watching him. The walk back to town felt longer than it should have. Each step heavy with betrayal, with anger, with the bitter taste of trust broken. Wyatt had been shot at, stabbed, beaten, physical wounds healed. But this cut deeper than any bullet. Frank Thompson sat at the deputy's desk when they entered, cleaning his rifle. He looked up with that easy smile Wyatt had once thought genuine. "Sheriff? Heard you were at the cemetery. That's mighty decent of you, paying respects even to enemies. That's what separates us from animals," Wyatt said, closing the door behind him. "Respect, honor, loyalty." He let the words hang in the air. "Tell me, Frank, what do you think happens to a man who betrays all three?" The smile faded from Thompson's face. His hand moved slightly toward his holstered pistol, then froze as he realized both Morgan and Virgil had drawn their weapons. "I don't know what you're talking about," Thompson said, but his voice lacked conviction. Wyatt tossed the journal onto the desk. $2,000. That's what Hollister paid you to sell out your badge, your brothers in arms, your oath. Was it worth it, Frank? Thompson's face went through several emotions. Shock, fear, defiance, then resignation. His shoulders sagged. "You don't understand. My mother back in Ohio, she's sick. Needs medicine, needs care. Deputy's wages ain't enough. I thought I could just give him information. Didn't think anyone would actually die." "Tommy Chen almost died," Wyatt said, his voice hard as iron. "My brothers could have died. I could have died. And all those men lying up on Boot Hill, they're dead because you told Hollister where we'd be, what we were planning. I didn't know it would go like that. Thompson stood up, desperation in his eyes. Hollister said it would be clean, just you and him, fair fight. He lied to me too, and you believed him because you wanted to, Virgil said coldly. Because the money was more important than integrity. Thompson's hand dropped to his gun. So what now? You going to shoot me? String me up? Make an example? Wyatt had been thinking about this for the past hour, ever since Morgan had shown him the journal. Part of him, the cold, hard part, forged by years of frontier justice, wanted exactly that. Wanted to put a bullet in this traitor and be done with it. But another part remembered Sarah Mitchell's words, remembered her husband dying for a badge, leaving her alone, remembered that justice and vengeance weren't the same thing, no matter how much they sometimes looked alike. Take off the badge, Wyatt said quietly. Thompson blinked. What? The badge? Take it off. You don't deserve to wear it. With shaking hands, Thompson unpinned the deputy's star and set it on the desk. It sat there between them, a small piece of metal that had once meant something. You're leaving Tombstone, Wyatt continued. Today, right now. You take what you can carry and you ride out. You never come back. You never wear a badge again. And you live with what you did every day for the rest of your life. That's it? Thompson looked confused. You're just letting me go. I'm giving you the chance you didn't give us, Wyatt said. The chance to live, to maybe find redemption somewhere down the road. But Frank, if I ever see you again, if I ever hear you've taken another lawman's oath, I will hunt you down and finish this. Do you understand me? Thompson nodded, grabbed his personal effects, and practically ran from the office. They heard his horse gallop away minutes later, the sound fading into the vast emptiness of the desert. You should have shot him, Morgan said. Maybe, Wyatt admitted. But I'm tired of shooting people. Tired of graves and guilt and trying to figure out where justice ends and murder begins. He picked up the badge Thompson had left behind, turning it over in his hands. Every man I kill, I become a little more like them. A little harder, a little less human. Virgil placed a hand on his shoulder. You did right, brother. Mercy's harder than vengeance. Always has been. That evening, the Silver Dollar Saloon was packed. The town had declared an impromptu celebration, not a celebration of death, but of survival, of community persisting despite violence, of tomorrow arriving against all odds. Wyatt stood behind his bar, pouring drinks, listening to stories get taller with each telling. Already the gunfight was becoming legend. By next month, there would be 50 gunmen instead of 8. By next year, Wyatt would have fought them off single-handed while juggling dynamite. That's how it always went. Truth became myth, myth became legend, and the actual men who'd bled and feared and survived got lost somewhere in between. Doc Holliday sat at the bar, nursing a whiskey, looking almost healthy in the lamplight. You know what your problem is, Wyatt, he said, that sardonic smile playing at his lips. I'm sure you're about to tell me. Your problem is you keep trying to be both the law and a human being. Can't be done. Not in this world. The law's cold, mechanical. Justice don't care about context or mercy or second chances. You keep injecting humanity into it, you're going to tear yourself apart. Maybe, Wyatt said. Or maybe that's exactly what the law needs. Someone to remember it's supposed to serve people, not just punish them. Philosophical tonight, are we? Doc raised his glass. Well, here's to your noble ideals. May they not get you killed before the consumption gets me. They drank in companionable silence. Around them, the saloon buzzed with life, poker games and laughter, arguments and reconciliations, all the messy, beautiful chaos of people living. Sarah Mitchell appeared at the bar, her 2 children in tow. They looked at Wyatt with wide eyes, hero worship mixed with healthy fear. Sheriff Earp, Sarah said formally, but her eyes were warm. My children wanted to thank you for keeping the town safe. The boy, couldn't have been more than 8, stepped forward. Are you really the fastest gun in the West, sir? Wyatt crouched down to the boy's level, his expression serious. You know what I am, son. I'm lucky. Lucky to have brothers who watch my back. Lucky to have friends who risk their lives for me. Lucky to be alive when good men are dead. Speed don't mean much if you don't have people worth being fast for. The boy nodded solemnly, not entirely understanding, but sensing the weight of the words. Sarah ushered her children away, but she paused and looked back. "You were right," she said quietly, "about choosing to keep breathing. I'm glad you chose that." After she left, Morgan slid onto the stool beside Doc. "She's sweet on you, brother. Any fool can see it. Any fool can also see I'm a terrible bet for a woman looking for stability," Wyatt replied. But he watched her go with something that might have been regret. In another life, maybe. In another world, where badges didn't make you a target and justice didn't demand blood payment, the celebration continued into the night. Wyatt worked the bar, accepting handshakes and thanks, deflecting praise, sharing credit with his brothers and Doc and even young Tommy Chen, who showed up with his arm in a sling and pride in his eyes. Finally, as midnight approached and the crowd began to thin, Virgil joined Wyatt behind the bar. "Been thinking," Virgil said, "about what comes next." "What comes next is we keep doing what we're doing," Wyatt replied. "Keeping the peace, upholding the law. For how long? How many more Hollisters are out there nursing grudges? How many more sons of men we've killed, waiting for their chance?" Virgil's voice wasn't angry, just tired. Bone-deep tired. "I'm not saying run. I'm saying maybe it's time to think about when enough is enough. When we've paid our dues and earned the right to just live." Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. "You want to resign? Hang up the badge?" "I don't know what I want," Virgil admitted. "Just know I'd like to see you married someday. See Morgan settle down. See us all make it past 40 without bullet holes in us. That too much to ask?" "In this life, maybe." Wyatt looked around his saloon, his achievement, his proof that he could be more than just a gun. "But you're right. Can't do this forever. Question is, who takes over when we're gone? Who carries the badge next? Someone younger, someone who still believes justice is simple." Virgil smiled sadly. "Someone who hasn't learned yet that every choice is complicated and every bullet changes you." They stood together in the lamplight. Two brothers who'd survived another day in a profession where survival was never guaranteed. Outside, Tombstone slept, peaceful for now, protected by men who'd chosen to stand between civilization and chaos. The next morning, Wyatt woke to sunlight streaming through his window and the sound of the town coming alive. His side ached where Hollister's bullet had grazed him, a reminder that he was mortal, that luck eventually ran out. He dressed slowly, pinned on his badge, strapped on his gun belt. The ritual of it, the weight of responsibility settling familiar on his shoulders. He'd done this 1,000 times, would do it 1,000 more, until his luck finally failed, or his body gave out, or he found the wisdom to walk away. At his desk in the sheriff's office, he found a letter. No signature, but he recognized the handwriting. "Mayor Clanton. Sheriff Earp. The town council met last night. By unanimous vote, we're offering you and your brothers permanent positions, increased pay, full authority, and our complete support. You've proven that Tombstone needs the Earps, and we're man enough to admit we were wrong to doubt you. We're also investigating the territorial governor's office for corruption. Seems Hollister had friends in high places, people who wanted you dead for reasons beyond just revenge. You stirred up a bigger hornet's nest than you knew. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today, just know that this town stands with you. Yesterday you saved us. Tomorrow we'll try to deserve it." Clanton Wyatt set the letter down and looked out his window. The street was clean now, no bloodstains, no evidence of the violence that had erupted 3 days ago. The West was good at forgetting, at moving on, at burying its dead and dancing on their graves. But Wyatt remembered. He always remembered. Every face, every name, every choice that led to a grave on Boot Hill. That was his burden. The badge came with authority, but it also came with ghosts. Morgan and Virgil arrived together, both looking more rested than they had in days. "So," Morgan said, grinning, "I hear we got raises." "We got targets painted bigger on our backs," Wyatt corrected. "But yes, also raises." "Worth it," Virgil said. "Every penny, every bullet, every scar. Because at the end of the day, we stand for something that matters." Through the window, Wyatt watched the town, his town, their town, The bakery opening, releasing the smell of fresh bread. The blacksmith's forge already glowing. Children running toward the schoolhouse. Normal life, made possible by men willing to stand in the gap between order and chaos. Doc Holliday wandered in, looking pale but determined. "Heard you boys got promoted? Does that mean you're buying the drinks tonight?" "It means we're still alive to buy drinks," Wyatt replied. "And yeah, Doc, tonight they're on me." They sat together in the office, 4 men who'd survived impossible odds through skill, luck, and unbreakable loyalty. Outside, Tombstone lived. Inside, they planned for tomorrow, knowing full well that tomorrow might bring new threats, new challenges, new men with grudges and guns. But that was life in the West. You didn't get guarantees. You didn't get safety. You got today, and if you were smart and fast and lucky, you got tomorrow too. Wyatt Earp touched the badge on his chest, still solid, still meaning something. He thought about Sarah Mitchell and the life he'd never have. Thought about Jack Hollister and the life that boy could have lived. Thought about his brothers and the bond that had saved them all. The fastest gun in the West. Maybe that was true once. Maybe it still was. But Wyatt knew the real secret now. Speed didn't matter half as much as knowing when to draw and when to holster. When to fight and when to show mercy. When to be the law and when to be human. He stood, stretched, felt his body protest. Getting older. Slowing down. One day, someone would be faster. One day, his luck would run out. But not today. Today, he was still standing. His brothers were alive. The town was safe. And somewhere out there, under the endless western sky, the sun was climbing toward noon, that eternal hour of reckoning that defined his life. But this noon would pass peacefully. And the next, and maybe, just maybe, enough peaceful noons would stack up that one day he could take off the badge, put away the gun, and finally discover who Wyatt Earp was when he wasn't the fastest draw in the West. Until then, he had work to do, justice to uphold, a reputation to live up to, or maybe, finally, to live beyond. He walked out onto the street, his shadow stretching long in the morning light, ready for whatever came next, because that's what legends did. They kept standing, kept fighting, kept believing that tomorrow would be better than yesterday, even when yesterday left scars that never quite healed, even when the gun got heavier with every passing year. But even when the ghosts outnumbered the living Wyatt Earp, sheriff, saloon owner, brother, survivor, the fastest gun in the West, and the man still searching for redemption in a land that dealt only in lead and legends.